Hello everyone, welcome to IS 300 and today's discussion of Chapter 5, Cloud Computing Platforms. In Chapter 5, we talk about Infrastructure as a Service, also known as IaaS. Amazon's EC2 is an example, the most popular example of Infrastructure as a Service. We also talk about Platform as a Service, where we talk about the Google App Engine, and we talk about Microsoft Azure. Both of those are Platform as a Service offerings. Infrastructure is simply all of the components that are needed to provide computing services in an enterprise system. The servers, the storage, the network connectivity, all of those are part of the infrastructure. Those can be provided for a fee, can be leased, if you will, so that instead of you having to maintain a data center, instead of a company having to maintain a data center, they simply purchase the infrastructure as a service, and then they can access the infrastructure through the web. The users will then be able to provision virtual machines and control them, install them, compile and run software on the virtual machines in the infrastructure as a service environment. Amazon's Elastic Cloud Compute, or EC2, one of the most widely used infrastructure as a service offerings. It gives users access to dedicated virtual machines. Virtual machines can then be configured any way the users prefer. The actual physical server behind that virtual machine is transparent to the end user. They don't really need to know the details of the physical servers. They simply need to be able to control and access the virtual machines. EC2 is often described as the entire cloud itself. Here's an example of a configuration of an Amazon EC2 environment. The dashed lines are considered servers. So you have a certain group of servers here that are holding the virtual machines, virtual machine 1, 2, and 6. You have another group of virtual machines on a server here using TCP/IP to send and receive information across the network. You have some database servers, of course. You can have temporary storage in database environment, in the database environment on an infrastructure as a service. These are considered as temporary storage for queuing and inputs and outputs and things like that. Then you also have the simple DB server, database server, which holds the simple DB database. And then you have other information, Amazon machine images, storage, and those types of things also available. You've got virtual private network where the users can connect to those servers. And again, the servers themselves are transparent to the user, but the virtual machines inside of those servers is what the users are paying to access. So the user, if they're using infrastructure as a service, they're paying on an hourly basis based on the time that the server is up, the time that they actually use. They can use a publicly available static IP address. A static IP address, simply an IP address that does not change, as opposed to a dynamic IP address, which will change based on the period of time that the IP address is leased. Static IP addresses, some consider them to be more secure and more stable. You can also have the network data transfer to any server, either with or without a static IP address. Charged on usage, and it's very cheap, a few cents per gigabyte, cheaper than maintaining an entire data center and the infrastructure that is required in that data center for data to be sent and received across the network. The user can provision and access the servers that communicate with each other through the Amazon cloud, and the Amazon SimpleDB database service provides a place to store objects where those objects can be stored and retrieved efficiently. Then we talk about platform as a service. A platform is simply the combination of an operating system such as a Windows operating system, a Mac operating system, a Linux operating system, or a Unix operating system. Those types of operating systems plus the hardware that those operating systems are installed on, that is considered a platform. So if you're using platform as a service, you are simply renting or leasing an operating system, the hardware and the software that is required to make up that operating system. So if you're a Windows user, you have to purchase the Windows operating system. You've got to purchase the software. You've also got to have the hardware to run that operating system on. That is considered a platform. So instead of purchasing the hardware and purchasing the operating system, you simply use platform as a service. And the Google App Engine is one of the primary examples of platform as a service. It hides the actual environment from the user. Software platform provided along with a solution developer kit, an SDK, which makes development very simple, very easy, so that users can develop applications and then deploy them on the cloud. Platform then executes the applications and does any of the external requesting and scheduling of jobs that's required. The servers, again, transparent to the user. Platform able to share application servers among lower users who don't need as much capacity. So you might have multiple customers on a single server. The customer does not necessarily need to know that, nor should they have any concern about that. They simply need access to the platform. The resources can then be scaled to accommodate a heavy load. If the load gets heavy during peak hours or things like that, it is scalable. Available on the internet. The applications are available as soon as they are successfully uploaded. Platform can be deployed and managed 24/7, but only charged for service when the customer actually accesses it. Even though the platform is running all the time, the user only pays for service when they actually use it. Here's an example of Google's platform as a service. Here's the front end, the Google application engine front end. You've got multiple servers here. You've got some memory cache and the Google Data Store, which is their database type environment in the Google world. You have a Google file system, just as Windows has a Windows NT file system. You have a Google file system if you're using Google. The Google Data Store, like Amazon SimpleDB, it is non-relational, so you don't have primary key, foreign key relationships, but you do have the ability to join similar data by using what's called parent-child associations if you need to group data. You can also do simple queries with Google, very similar to what you can do with SQL, but Google has its own query language, GQL, Google Query Language, as opposed to SQL, SQL Query Language. Amazon DB, non-relational. SimpleDB is non-relational, very similar to the Google Data Store. It is used as a web service in conjunction with Amazon's EC2. queries on a simple DB database can include conditions like if equal to, greater than, less than, things like that, any number of attributes. Simple DB data is replicated as in most distributed database environments. And when there is replication, it's possible that the replication will not go to all the servers at once, but it will go to at least one replica and eventually reach all of the other servers that need to be replicated so that the data is fairly consistent all the time. Microsoft's Azure is Microsoft's platform as a service offering. It uses Microsoft development tools, Visual Studio or Visual Studio.net, which gives you C#.net, Visual Basic.net, active server pages, and all of the types of in the solution developer kit and framework that is provided by Microsoft's Visual Studio. Gives you the standard tool set that can be developed and deployed on Microsoft's cloud. It uses Microsoft's enterprise middleware for identity management, for permissions and setting up users and configuration and things like that. Web services and all those things can be deployed in the cloud on a distributed and globally accessible platform. The benefit of Microsoft Platform as a Service is that it is easily connected to all of the Microsoft environments that are already existing. So it makes for a seamless transition going from a Microsoft shop to Microsoft Azure. Here's an example of Microsoft Azure. And again, we've got the servers. Here's an Internet Information Server, IIS. So there's some web servers that are part of this platform. The permissions and the user roles and things like that, authentication, can be stored here as well in maybe an Active Directory or something like that. You might have the .NET framework, the .NET services, that are also another server. And then you have of course, the storage, database, binary large objects for pictures and things that might be stored in a catalog. That's what binary large objects are, usually very large files, graphic files, images, and things of that nature. Pre-built queries, stored procedures, and things like that if you're using SQL. And then you, of course, have all of the database servers that are using SQL data services, or now, which has now been replaced by SQL Azure. If you have any questions about Chapter 5, please let me know.